Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Pen and today I'm bringing you 4 seasons, stamps and dies. This is a stamp set and die set that can be used quite well to do scrapbooking. So I've got a die set here that's called 4 seasons and it's got dies for each of the seasons with a shadow die that can go in the front of a scrapbook or in the card front. And I've got accompanying sentiments to go with each of these seasons, and they come in the form of BetterPress plates. But rather than use them as BetterPress plates, I use them to do some hot foiling. I do love hot foiling with BetterPress plates. And they come with a nice die, a coordinating die to cut out all the sentiments following the shapes of each sentiment. Have a look at each of the sentiments for each of those seasons, and you can see how complementary they are for each of the seasons. And I can almost picture using the right photographs to do your scrapbooking. I don't do any scrapbooking here because I didn't get around to doing any of my photographs, but I do cards. This stamp set is a representation of sub-sentiments for all of the seasons. So if you don't have a BetterPress machine, you can use the stamps instead. Or you can get the BetterPress plates and a coordinating die sets and use them to do foiling. I do hot foiling with these sentiments because I do like how they turn out and it's so easy to do them. For hot foiling, I use the Hammermill Smooth Premium card. It's got a nice smooth surface, which is so ideal for hot foiling. So this is my go-to card when I want to use a white card for hot foiling. And here I'm using the polished brass hot foil. I do like this as the gold hot foil. So this polished brass hot foil is my go-to for the gold hot foil. So I'm cutting right sized hot foil to put the plate, all the sentiments on it. Now, usual principles, the dull side of the hot foil faces the card, pretty side of hot foil faces the pretty side of the press plate, and then you just put the flat side of the press plate onto the heated platform of the foil press machine. So pretty standard, and I tend to use medium setting 20 to 25 seconds. That's for the Gemini foil press machine, and I use the Gemini Junior die cutting and embossing machine as the accompaniment to get the hot foil pressed into the card. And I get perfect results all the time. If you're going to use colored card, try and get really smooth colored card to get good results like this. Or what you could do, because the foiling is resist ink, you could ink onto the foiled sentiments and still get a different colored background. So you're like foiling on colored card. Here I use the coordinating dies and put it through my die cutting machine, and all the sentiments come out beautifully die cut. And what I tend to do, I die cut another set which is blank, and to give the sentiments a bit of layering. I tend to put 2 or 3 layers to give the sentiment a little bit of dimension, and then I put it into the coordinating sets so I know which sentiments go in which set so I can take them and use them. Now all that hot foil, that was the hot foil that I hot foiled all these sentiments, I'm not going to waste them. I'm going to make negative hot foils. So you can use this Spellbinders smaller rectangle, but I prefer using the Catherine Fuller larger solid rectangle so I can get all the sentiments negative hot foiled at the same time. And for that, I put it at a higher setting, and the highest setting, and I tend to do it for 30 seconds, and I always get good results. Again, putting it onto Hammermill card. You just need to make sure the plastic layer that comes off is nice and clear, and there you go. And that way you know all the foil has been transferred onto the card and you'll get a perfect results. I die cut it with a coordinating die, and I've put it into each of the packets so it's ready to use when I'm making my cards. I'm going to do some ink blending, and this is how I store my foam pads for each distress ink, so it's easy to retrieve and put away. So the ink blending here, the perfect card for ink blending is my Strathmore Bristol Smooth card. Always use that for ink blending because it really facilitates the ink that goes onto the card. And I start off with the 3 Distress Oxide inks. Here I'm using complementary inks where they are all of a similar color family. So you've got your light teal, darker teal, and a blue. So teal is a blue and green, so I'm just graduating the colors. So it's a similar color family. For ink blending, you need 3 ingredients. The right card, which is a Strathmore Bristol Smooth card, dome foam pads and juicy ink pads. And usually, if you're patient enough, you can get a lovely ink blend between the three colors. And I tend to use three colors, but you will see I do use more than three colors in some of the ink blends I do in this video. And the idea here is to get colors that mimic the seasons. Here I'm going for winter. So this is what my interpretation of winter colors, rather, maybe it's not my interpretation, but I did go online and say for each of the seasons what background suit. And then I just went to my Distress Inks collection and Distress Oxide inks rather, and saw what colors I had and created these backgrounds. So it's easy enough to put away each of those foam pads into my little acrylic tray which comes in a drawer. I'll link that in the description below so it's easy for you to have a look and see if that's a storage you want to explore. Here I'm going to show you some not exactly the same color family, so it's quite opposite sides of the color wheel. So you've got a light teal, an orange, and a brown. I'm trying to get an autumnal background here. So again, I do the same thing. I put three colors and then I use the colors in between and try to ink blend them gradually. So it takes a little bit of patience here. As you can see, I go over them a few times where the colors meet. The orange and the brown I thought was a little bit easier because they're slightly darker colors, but I did take a bit of a longer time to blend the delineation between the orange and the light teal. So to make sure you don't contaminate your colors, especially when there are lighter colors involved, keep a damp stamp chamois handy to constantly clear your surface. And I'm using a glass surface here, so it's easy enough to clean every time I'm going to continue blending. So it does take me a little while to get that nice smooth blend between the orange and the light teal. I do love how this came out. And I'm going to do some embossing with embossing folders. So you've got the winter. I'm going to use this for a winter background. This is going to be my autumnal background. And then the next one, I'm going to use it for more of a summer background. I've got more colors here. And then you've got two summerish backgrounds, more color. In fact, I've got quite a few colors in that one. And this is my spring background. I do a Halloween background later as well, but I don't show it now. So here I went through all my embossing folders and my dies from previous Spellbinders club kits from previous months because they tend to do it by season. And I thought it's quite nice to look through what I've got this year and use them to get into the seasonal cards for each of these card fronts. So here for winter, I've just used the big winter. Now, I did not use the shadow die here. I think I used the shadow die only for one card because I like the winter on its own. I think it's nice if you use the shadow die if you've got a bigger surface like a scrapbook page. So these sentiments and dies are perfect for scrapbooking. I'll definitely keep these dies and sentiments to do scrapbooking. Once I get organized with getting my photos done, it does take time looking through your photos, picking the right photographs to do your scrapbooking. Certainly I'm going to do it, especially when the kids are growing up so fast. I do like to do scrapbooking. In fact, I started in crafting by doing scrapbooking. I started doing scrapbooking when I had my son back in 2005, and then commitments, work and family commitments came in the way, and I had to stop scrapbooking and crafting altogether. And then I took up crafting again during the pandemic. And that's kind of how I got into whole crafting again, creating my own YouTube channel, all of that. The YouTube channel was a little bit of a challenge, and I wouldn't have done it without the help of my husband and my son, who helped me with the whole technology side, editing videos, etc. So it has been a bit of a challenge from that perspective. But after a couple of years on, this is my third year now, so I'm kind of got into the groove of it. So it's easy enough to get a lovely card front here, winter, and then you've got so much fun and hence the background with the snowflakes. This is the autumnal background, and I'm going to use the 3D embossing folder from Spellbinders Club Kits from September 2024 this month. It's called the Pumpkin Patch, and I'm going to use the right sandwich to put it through my embossing machine because it's a 3D folder. So 3D embossing folders and 2D embossing folders can have different sandwich. And look how beautiful the image is. I will show more embossing techniques when I release a video just on those Spellbinder club kits. Now before I do anything else, I'm using some metallic watercolors to do some splatters. And I think the gold goes so well against the autumnal colors on the surface of that embossed background. How beautiful that is. I've also got a sticky mat from Sweet Petunia here, where I've die cut some pumpkins and foliage from the small die of the month from September 2024 called Autumn Scarecrow. I'm using Twinkling H2O paints here. These are shimmery watercolor paints, which I've had for years, for decades. So my initial foray into crafting back in the early 2000s, I got these sets. I think got quite a few of these, and I've just kept them away. When I was looking for something the other day, I found a box of this, and I decided to take it out and use them. They're beautiful cakes of shimmery watercolor. You just need to activate them by spraying some water into them and just waiting probably for 5 minutes, and then you get the most beautiful consistency of shimmery watercolors. And I'm using that to paint the pumpkins and the foliage that goes with it. I'm just using some oranges, darker oranges, a yellow, and a couple of shades of green for the foliage. I just think it looks really pretty. I'm not being very precise in how I'm adding color. I'm just taking the color and pouncing it onto the die cuts because the images are quite small and the die cuts are really, really nice with some nice etched lines. So you just need to pounce some color onto it, and I think you can get a beautiful die cut colored image. You could also just do a whole sheet of card with these paints and then do the die cutting. Either way. So I might do that when I do the actual video on this small die of the month, because I haven't done my Spellbinders Club kits for September 2024 yet. I just happened to use them for this release of 4-season die cuts, and I think it goes so well for the autumnal season. And I will show you different ways that you can do it. I prefer to die cut and add color to it, whether it's paint or inks or Lindy's Gang shimmery powders. You've got so many different mediums that you can use. I've die cut 2 sets of this word autumn, and you can see I've slightly offset it so you can see a little bit of a white background, a shadow, just a slight offset, not quite a shadow, but a slight offset, so it stands out against that background. And I've just put a so very thankful sentiment, which I hot foiled earlier, and I'm going to add the pumpkins and the foliage and the lower bit of the card panel, embossed card panel, because that's where the brown is, and it just does show better with the orange pumpkins and green foliage. I really like how this card turned out. I like the color combination and I feel it's really autumnal, and I've used some dimensional foam squares both in the sentiments as well as the pumpkins to give it a bit of a lift, and therefore it stands out. It pops on the card. I really like how that shimmery watercolor and that embossed background goes. Here's my Halloween ink blending that I've done, and I've put the colors on the screen. So I didn't do it all vertically, I've just added it here and there, and I did some splatters with some black paint. I've just taken this die from the small die of the month from September 2024 Spellbinders Club Kits. I've just taken the hat as well as the bats, and it's a very simple card, and I just put spooky and fun sentiment. All of my cards I've put the panel slightly smaller than the card base, and I've backed it with some foam sheet. The card base here is slightly smaller than an A7 card because I've cut it slightly smaller, and it measures 5 inches by 6.5 inches, and it's a top folding card. I really like the simplicity of this card, and it really, really does represent the Halloween theme. Here is the card that I've done what I think is a variation of a summer themed colored background, and I'm going to just sprinkling it with some water because distress oxide inks react so well with water, and you get a light sprinkle there. And I'm using this bunny here. It's from the large die of the month from February 2024. Again, another Spellbinders Club Kits, the floral bunny baskets. And I'm going to add some flower die cuts here. It's a Spellbinders flower die cut, but I don't know from where because I have it in my desk because I use it quite often. I'm not sure from which set. And I'm using a little bit of a tool here to just give it a little bit of dimension to this die cut flowers so it doesn't lie flat on the card surface, but it sticks out a little bit and gives it a little bit dimension. And I'm using my liquid glue here to put it onto the card front. I've had questions about this liquid glue. I like using this art glitter glue, and I've used it for many, many years. And I do get a big set, I think a 16-ounce bottle that I use to top up these 2-ounce or 4-ounce bottles that I use. And I'm adding some gem in the middle of these flowers just so it looks nice and pretty. It takes a little while to put these gems on, but I think it really does the job, and it gives that nice spring summery image. Using this Crystal Katana mixed media picker tool really helps with gems and small die cuts. It makes it so much easier to attach them onto the surface. Now this is my spring, and I'm going to use a spring burst 3D embossing folder from a very old Spellbinders Club kits from February 2023. So I'm just putting it through the right sandwich for a 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to attach it onto a card base. Same thing, you've got the foam sheet behind. Especially when it's embossed panel, I like to use a foam sheet behind so it lays flat and it gives it a bit of dimension. This I'm using the shadow die, and I've die cut the shadow with some vellum. And the spring, I've used the Distress ink color of that same Distress oxide color in the middle of that background, which is peacock feathers. I think the Distress ink is slightly darker if you compare it to the Distress oxide. The Distress oxide is more pastel-y, so I decided to use the Distress ink for the sentiment spring, and I'm attaching it to the shadow of the vellum, and I'm going to put that right in the middle. And again, this foliage and die cut of the flowers is from last month, the Spellbinders Club Kits Colorful Expressions Blooms. So it's the large die of the month. I like having all these Spellbinders Club kits, and I do store them by the month because all the months are by theme. So if I want a spring, summer, winter, autumn theme, I can get it all from the Spellbinders Club kits, and storing it by theme is perfect. But if they are very sentiment heavy, I do tend to keep them right where I craft so I can reach them quickly. So I'm just putting spring, and then you've got new beginnings, and voila, I've got a nice beautiful card, and I do love the color combination of this card. I do add some glossy accents onto the sentiment spring because I think it's just calling out for it. So this glossy accents, it dries, it's slightly dimensional, but what it also gives you, it's a lovely, really nice, lovely shine. So once you've put the glossy accents onto the sentiment, do leave it aside for at least an hour to dry because you don't want to mess with that. So once and you can even sprinkle some glitter onto the glossy accents while they are still wet. I don't do it here, but you could if you want that extra sparkle. The next card is a summer themed card, and you can see the colors I've used here. And I'm using the June 2024 embossing folder of the month, Summertime Waves. Usual, I sprinkle some water at the back of the card so it softens the card fibers and it doesn't crack when I put it through the embossing machine. This is a 2D embossing folder, so you use the right sandwich. And here I'm going to use the stamp, the All Seasons Sentiment stamp, to stamp a couple of sentiments to go with the summer theme. So I've got Sunshine and Smiles and Make a Splash. I'm going to heat emboss it. So before I do any heat embossing, I'm going to use my anti-static powder to get rid of all the oils on the card. And this prevents the embossing powder from going all over the place. And I'm going to use my stamp conditioning eraser to prepare the stamp, especially when they're new stamps, to get the ink to stay onto them. And this is the clear embossing ink that I'm using because I'm going to use an embossing powder and use a stamp press tool to press the ink onto the card. I'm going to be using the Altenew Rose Gold Embossing Powder and sprinkle it onto the stamped image. Here you've got a lovely stamped image of the sentiments that I've just stamped. I'm going to use my dual speed Wow heat tool to melt the embossing powder onto the card. Now, while I'm melting this, what I do is sometimes when the embossing powder doesn't have that sparkle that I want, maybe because I've overheated it, I stamp it again with clear embossing ink, but this time I sprinkle it with clear embossing powder so it gives it that nice dimension when you heat emboss it. And that's the beauty of using a stamping platform. Here I'm going to use the coordinating die for the BetterPress plates, and it works for the stamp as well, and die cut it. This is the clear stamp and die of the month from June 2024. I put the image there and I embossed this image with the rose gold embossing powder as well, and I've die cut the sentiment summer from some rose gold metallic card, and adhered it with some foam squares along with the couple of sentiments that I heat embossed earlier on. And there you go. I think it's a beautiful summer themed card. Here are all the cards that I've created. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. All the products I've used, to the best of my abilities, I've linked them in the description below, so do check them out. If you've got any questions, do leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I really appreciate the comments you give because it allows me to improve my videos. And sometimes if you say that you like a particular type of video, I can do more of them. I really enjoyed making these summer theme cards because I do enjoy ink blending as well as embossing. Embossing folders techniques are something I enjoy doing, which is why for each of my Spellbinders club kits, whenever there's an embossing folder, I try to do various themes or various techniques with it. I do lots of Spellbinders club kits, and I tend to do release a playlist of all the Spellbinders club kits of the month, so it's easier for you to access them. I also do their Spellbinders core releases, so do check them out, and I really hope you're inspired and will have loads of ideas to create cards or even scrapbook pages. Thank you so much for staying till the end of the video. Happy crafting and do enjoy.